Hey class, today I'm going to be walking you through figure 8.24 on sexual differentiation in humans. Um, just to kind of give you a little outline of where we're headed in this tutorial, I'm going to break this figure down in three separate parts. There's the first part. I'm going to run you through kind of a little analogy, talking about the different ingredients that come into play as we break down the three different stages of sexual differentiation. And I'm going to introduce that. Secondly, I'm going to introduce my own hand-drawn kind of representation of the figure so that you can kind of get an idea of what this looks like, kind of introducing some more complex terminology. And then I'm going to actually show you the figure from the textbook. And by then you should be able to have a pretty good understanding of the material, and it should be easy to understand. So let's start this off with a little analogy. First, in the first 6 weeks of gender differentiation, it starts off with basically two, we'll call them pieces of dough. There's been, some things in part of it, like flour and things that have mixed in to get started. But for the most part, it looks pretty similar. And this is what that first stage kind of looks like. It's the stage where everything's kind of undifferentiated and looks the same. Next, we're going to introduce something a little different. And I've used the analogy of the tortilla versus the crepe. Here, this stage, this is the 8-week stage. At this stage, there's some differences happening here. Like, these things look alike, but it's very clear that a tortilla is not the same thing as the crepe. There's some key ingredients, and I've decided to use the ingredients salts and sugar, which make these things very separate. So as we can tell, these things are not fully differentiated. They're not in their full forms of meals, but this stage, there's definitely a difference seen in this. Next, we have our 15-week stage. This is our final stage where everything is fully developed. The crepe is a beautiful meal. Maybe there's some strawberries on top, raspberries, whipped cream, chocolate sauce to make it more fully and formed. And then we have on our other side, we have the tortilla in this amazing taco. It's a full fresh meal. These, when you look at these are so different compared to what we started with before. So now I'm going to walk you through a little diagram here to start off. So here, let's start from the top. 6-week mark. Everything's pretty much the same, but as it looks in our actual figure, there's two ducts present. Actually, there's a male duct, and a female duct present as things are underdeveloped, and it looks the same. Everyone looks the same. Now, the child might be born and their sex is differentiated at birth with the chromosomes, but for the most part, it looks kind of the same. Nothing's developed yet, as we talked about. I mean, there's a genital thing here, but it's not differentiated yet. We have the Wolffian duct. Think wolf for boy. This is the male duct, and then the Müllerian duct for female. But both are present. One hasn't kind of outgrown the other. We don't really quite know what these are yet. Everything kind of is the same. And then we're going to kind of move a little forward, and I've just chosen to use the female anatomy, just because I think it's easier to understand in this example, and we'll see the difference between the male and the female as we progress to the textbook's figure. But next, we've reached 8 weeks. And now 8 weeks, we're starting to see a little differences. Now, remember back to that analogy of the tortilla and the crepe. They're separating a little bit. We've lost our wolf duct here, and we see there's just a Müllerian duct. We also kind of start to see some development in the ovaries happening here. And we even can see the formation of the clitoris in this gland right here. And that's our 8-week mark. Next, we're going to move forward as things are fully differentiated in this third stage of 15 weeks. We can now see fully formed ovaries. We now have a completely put together genitalia down here. We have the clitoris, we see the vagina, we even see our labia minora, the labia majora. There is complete sexual differentiation here. Now I want to kind of go into a little bit on how hormones come into play, because I think it's pretty interesting. I'm going to kind of walk you through the chromosomes and how hormones come into play in the different stages here. And you can kind of get a better picture of just this textbook figure and how it all works together. Okay, so starting on our 6 week mark here, as you can see, it's like we discussed. Everything is undifferentiated. There is chromosomes XX or XY, XX being female and XY being male, that is determined at conception, but there's not really any hormone differences that exist yet. And if there's no major hormones that are influencing the sexual development at this stage, there's not really going to be any difference in the gonads. So both ducts are present, kind of like we saw in the other one, but it's kind of just helpful to see that there doesn't really need to be even two separate pictures here. It's just one, the same thing. So that's an easy way to understand it. We're going to be leaving this early stage, and we're going to now be entering our middle stage here. This is where the gonad differentiation begins. If the chromosomes are XY, we're going to see some male development start to begin. The SRY gene, which is the sex determining region Y, is going to activate certain hormones like testosterone, or even a more saturated version, dihydrotestosterone, which are going to kind of help influence the leading of the testes to develop. And then once those testes are developed, even more testosterone is going to kind of be present, which is going to promote even more Wolffian duct development in the male reproductive structures, and especially the AMH hormone, the anti-Müllerian hormone, which, if you can remember, that the female duct is called the Müllerian hormone duct, the anti-Müllerian hormone is going to be just what it sounds. It's going to cause the Müllerian duct to regress. It's an anti-hormone, so it's going to kind of get rid of that female duct here. And then moving over to the female version, there's going to be no SRY. So the ovaries by default are going to form because there is no SRY gene that's activating certain developments of the testes. And with no AMH hormone present as well, then by default, the Müllerian ducts, they remain. They don't kind of get rid of themselves. And they begin to develop into a uterus. There are also going to be some development of fallopian tubes, and even the operative vagina, as we can see here, the glans clitoris. And yeah, there's going to be no testosterone. So without testosterone, as we can see, the Wolffian ducts here, they're going to kind of just start to regress and disappear. So we can kind of start to see back to our analogy, the tortilla and the crepe kind of start to take on their own form here. And then lastly, we're going to move to the third final stage of 15 weeks. In this stage, this is where, this is our last later stage. There's going to be full differentiation of the internal and the external structures, as you can see here. And we're going to start by looking at the man. So if there's an XY chromosome in most men, then the testosterone produced by the testes, remember that essential hormone, continues to strengthen the Wolffian duct structures, and they begin to just develop into a much more defined shape. And then DHT, the dihydrotestosterone, is a much more, like we discussed, potent form of testosterone. It's going to form via the 5-alpha reductase enzyme, and that's going to fully masculinize the external genitalia. So that's where we kind of get the scrotal swelling here and the penis, which is the full development of that external genitalia. Next, moving on to the female, there's going to be that XX chromosome, and that development is going to completely differentiate here. And there is no presence of the AMH hormone. So the Müllerian ducts, they develop fully into the uterus. The ovaries and the upper vagina all develop. There's no testosterone, so the genital tubercle forms the clitoris, and all of the labia folds develop into the majora and the minora, as we can see here. And yeah, that basically summarizes the figure. But I just want to leave with some key questions, because I think there are some really valuable insights to be made in kind of sexual differentiation, because not everybody in this world has a key different genitalia. There are actually some key disorders of sexual development that is directly linked to kind of like some hormones not being as present. So for example, if there is a condition called AIS, which is an androgen insensitivity syndrome. In this case, the body does not respond to testosterone. There's kind of an insensitivity to it, and the testes will form, but the Wolffian ducts won't fully develop. So the external genitalia can actually appear female, but there is actually no uterus or ovaries going on in the inside here. So there would be kind of a male kind of anatomy going on up here and a female anatomy up here, because there's not enough hormones to fully get you to the stage of full development. Thinking about that, I think it's a very valuable question to ask. What would happen if certain hormones weren't present? What would happen to the external genitalia? What would the internal kind of effects of that look like? And I think that's something that's worth pondering and understanding. The next figure actually touches a lot more on the predictable changes that happen in development. So I'd urge you to go check that out, as it leads you into further education on this subject. But thanks so much for listening, and that's all I have for you. So I hope that helped make figure 2.4 much more easier to grasp. Thank you so much.